Tribe, my name is Kelly Girk, and I'm going to be talking to you guys today, just reviewing a few things that you may have missed in the past couple weeks of lessons, going from the story of Abraham to picking up this week's lesson, which is the 10 Commandments. So the few sections that we'll be going through today are the faith of Abraham, the family that God blessed him with, the famine that led the Israelites to Egypt, and the freedom God provided to bring them out of Egypt in the Exodus. So, in our first step, Abraham was a man called by God, and he had great faith. The Lord promised that he would make Abraham a father of many nations, that he would be blessed, and that through his offspring, the whole world would be blessed as well. So Abraham and his wife Sarah didn't have any children, but through his faith, he believed that God would one day fulfill that promise. The Lord set up many covenants with Abraham just to show that He is the Lord our God, and He will keep His promises. And one day soon, Abraham and Sarah were blessed with a son named Isaac. So Isaac grew up, and his family continued the legacy that God had begun. Isaac had two sons, Esau and Jacob. His second son, Jacob, was jealous of his brother Esau and devised a plan to steal the birthright blessing. When Isaac was old, couldn't really see or hear very well, he told his son Esau to go prepare a tasty meal for him, and he would give the blessing. Jacob heard this, set up a disguise, even putting the skin of goats on his arms to make him hairy like Esau, so his father would believe him. He came in and took the blessing. Now Esau, when he found out, was very furious and upset, and he asked his father, "Bless me too, father." But Isaac said, "No, I'm sorry, my son. Your brother will rule over you all of your life." So Jacob was called the deceiver for this reason, but he was also deceived by his father-in-law Laban. When he worked to have a wife named Rachel, Laban gave the sister Leah. So Jacob ended up with 4 different wives and had 12 sons, but his favorite son was Joseph. And he blessed Joseph with the coat of many colors, and Joseph even had dreams and told his brothers, "Hey, one day you'll be bowing down to me." Of course, his brothers were not happy with this, so they created a plan to kill him, but ended up selling him as a slave to Egyptians instead. So Joseph goes to Egypt and becomes a slave for a man named Potiphar, and he was very successful and helpful in the household, but Potiphar's wife accused him of sleeping with her, so Joseph was thrown in prison. Well, even in prison, he had the opportunity to interpret dreams for a cupbearer and a baker to the king, and when these men were released, their dreams came true. Pharaoh heard about this and asked Joseph to interpret his dream for him. Pharaoh's dream had these fat cows that were eaten by skinny cows and thick heads of grain that were eaten by small heads of grain. And Joseph realized this was a warning from God, saying there would be 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. So Joseph was put in charge, second in charge of the whole land of Egypt by Pharaoh, and had a plan of selling food once the years of famine hit. Joseph's brothers over in Canaan realized they were running out of food, they were hungry, and so they traveled to Egypt to go and buy some. Well, Joseph recognized his brothers, but they didn't know him, and Joseph treated them as spies until one day he learned through a test with putting his silver cup in his youngest son and his youngest brother, Benjamin's sack, that he realized his brothers were truly changed, and they would sacrifice even their own lives to save their brother. So Joseph revealed himself to them, and they had a big family reunion, and all of Joseph's brothers and their wives and their children all came to live in Egypt. So a few hundred years passed, and the new Pharaoh was furious with the amount of Israelites that were living in Egypt, and he was afraid of them as well, because they may one day rise up and try to take over his country. So what Pharaoh did is he killed a lot of the baby boys, and he enslaved the Hebrews and the Israelites. But one boy, Moses, was spared from this, and he was raised as a prince of Egypt. So a few years pass, and he's grown up now and accidentally kills a man that was an Egyptian for trying to hurt a Hebrew. So Moses flees into the desert of Midian and becomes a shepherd. While he's there, God calls him through a burning bush and says, "Moses, I need you to go back to Egypt and tell Pharaoh, let my people go." So Moses went back to Egypt with the help of his brother Aaron and asked the Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. The Pharaoh refused and hardened his heart. So God sent 9 different plagues on Egypt. And for the 10th plague, which was the worst of all, was the death of the firstborn son. Now, many Egyptian baby boys had died that night, but the Hebrews were spared if they had painted the blood of a lamb over their doorpost while they were eating the Passover meal. So at this, Pharaoh decided to send the Israelites away. He had nothing to do with them, and they fled. But Pharaoh quickly changed his mind, realizing he lost a lot of slaves, and pursued them. So at this point, they're stuck. They've got Pharaoh's army charging behind them, and they've got the Red Sea in front of them. They have nowhere to go. So Moses lifted up a prayer to God, and the Lord parted the waters in the Red Sea, and they were all able to cross on dry land. And as the Egyptians tried to follow, the waves came back over them, and they were no more. So the Israelites kept wandering in the desert due to a cycle of disobeying God and getting angry with each other, and the Lord provided food for them. He provided light for them to travel, and after some time, the Israelites came to the desert of Sinai, where Moses was told by the Lord to prepare the people for his presence to come upon the mountain. Moses went up and received instruction from the Lord, and also the 10 Commandments, which you guys will be learning about this week. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your time with your groups.